Grizzly Hall has been the home to the Country Bears and their Jamboree since the park opened in 1971. There was a couple of brief stints where they replaced the attraction with some other things, their summer hoedown and their holiday-themed hoedown along the way, but those were all short-lived and just sort of a thing that they did for a little while. So for the better part of 50 years, the Country Bears existed exactly as they were. Now, I understand that in 2024, they're changing the Country Bear Jamboree. That's why the marquee is down right now. But the idea should be the same, that they will still have a lot of the same bears and some of the same sort of things happening, though I guess the music will be different and it'll be a little more updated. But here's the thing. The Country Bear Jamboree is actually an original idea from Walt Disney. He had an idea for something related to bears back when he was talking about building a lodge up in the ski area. So let's go and talk about that for a couple of minutes and how it relates back to what you know today as the Country Bear Jamboree. I wanted to reflect back on the origins of the Country Bear Jamboree. Now, of course, you know that the Country Bear Jamboree is actually a show that was created specifically for the Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World. So Disney World got it in 1971, Disneyland didn't get it until 1972, and Tokyo DisneyLand got it in 1979. So Disney World had this one first. It's the claim to fame that Disney World has for the first attraction that they built there first and moved to other locations. But there's a little bit more history to it. Back in the early 1960s, Walt Disney had wanted to put a show into the Disney's Mineral King ski resort that he was trying to build in California. He wanted some sort of a show to provide entertainment to the guests at the resort and knew that he wanted the show to feature some sort of a bear band. So he assigned Mark Davis to work on the concepts for it and start to talk about the ideas. Davis, with Al Bartino, came up with many of the bear groups, including bear marching bands, bear mariachi bands, and Dixieland bears. And then one day, as legend has it, Davis was working on drawings of the characters in his office, and Walt Disney walked in and saw the drawings and laughed because he loved the characters. Now, there's a little bit of an apocryphal story here that Disney turned around and said goodbye to Mark Davis, and it was the only time he'd ever said goodbye when he left the room. And Disney died a couple of days later. Now, after his death, the Imagineers decided to continue on and produce this sort of bear band concept. And they were going to produce something called the Bear Band Restaurant Show, and decided that they wanted to have a little country twang to it when they showed it at the ski resort. Now, the plans for the ski resort kind of fell apart along the way. They never materialized, but they still loved the idea of the bear band and that concept. So they decided to incorporate it into Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom in time for opening day. Later, X Atencio and George Bruns were brought in. Now, X is a guy who really had some strong understanding of the musical concept and how it could set the emotion of the scene. And George Bruns was an artistic person who had a lot of musical scores to his credit and was proficient in playing a lot of instruments. Between the two of them, they had come up with the music for Yo-Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me. And so now they were tasked with coming up with some music for the Country Bear Jamboree. Now, the show opened on October 1st, 1971 with park opening, and it received so much critical acclaim and so much feedback that the show was replicated at Disneyland and then later at Tokyo DisneyLand and so on. The show did happen to close at Disneyland in California to make way for other stuff, but you can still see the Critter Country and the bear area in Disneyland as a reference and a tribute to what the Country Bears was to them. And you may recall, too, that there was a 2002 movie that maybe wasn't so great that was called The Country Bears. But to conceptualize an attraction into a movie is a difficult thing, obviously. And it didn't have the success they hoped for, but certainly it had the right trappings and had the right feeling to it to kind of capture the emotion of the Country Bears and perhaps how they came to be the Country Bears at Walt Disney World. Now, a few fun technical facts for you. There are actually 5 stages numbered from left to right from the audience side. The 1 and 2 are on the left wing, the 3 is the main stage, and then 4 or 5 on the right side of the stage. There are a cast of 18 audio animatronic bears that appear in various stages and also rise up from the floor and come down from the ceiling. Stages 1, 2, 4, and 5, the ones on the outside, are actually turntables with 2 animatronics each fixed to them. As each scene finishes, the turntables revolve behind the curtains, and another character will be present on the stage when the curtain opens again, giving the impression that the performers have moved between stages. Approximately 1/3 of the turntable is always visible to the guests, while the remaining 2/3 emerge into a backstage area where maintenance can be carried out on the animatronics, even minor maintenance during shows if necessary. There are approximately a 50 to 120 second turn between the scenes. The host's bear, Henry, actually appears in the form of 3 separate figures during the show. The main stage has several backgrounds which descend on rails to provide a backdrop for the animals performing in the main stage. These backgrounds change when the main stage curtains are closed, and the 5 bear rugs, the singing band, are visible when no backdrop is in place. And they move forward on a hydraulic rolling stage when it's their turn to perform. Additional figures rise up from the stage and floor and from the ceiling on hydraulic platforms when necessary. It's a fun little show, kind of taking a romp through the country song genre and having some fun with the bears, having a hoedown. So let's take a look at the bears that exist in the show. Henry is the master of ceremonies, and he's welcoming and friendly brown bear. He wears a gray top hat, starched shirt front, and a string tie. It's implied that he and Teddy have some sort of backstage romance. Henry was voiced by Pete Renaday. Pete played an integral part in the Hall of Presidents. So it's interesting to hear how these guys did different things within the Disney community and voiced different parts in various attractions. Now, Renaday was also the voice of Captain Nemo in the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea attraction, and he's the voice of the narrator in the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. He also provided the voice for the Tomorrowland Transit Authority. Next up is Liverlips McGrowell. Now, Liverlips is perhaps the funniest looking bear. He gets his name from his very large lips. He's a brown bear and plays the guitar. But he's voiced by Jimmy Stoneman. Now Wendell. Wendell is a hyperactive golden brown bear who plays the mandolin. He always wears a blue bandana around his neck and a light brown hat. He also has a massive overbite and buck teeth. He's voiced by Bill Cole. Teddy Barra is a unique bear because she never appears on stage. Instead, she descends from a hole in the ceiling on her swing, which is decorated with pink roses. She's voiced by Patsy Stoneman. Ernest is the brown bear who plays the fiddle. He wears a derby and a red polka dot bow tie around his neck. He was voiced by Van Stoneman from October 1971 until July 1975, when his vocals were replaced and recorded by Randy Sparks. Terrence, who's also known as Shaker, is a tall bear with tan fur. Terrence wears a miner's cap, a yellow vest, and plays the guitar. He's voiced by Van Stoneman as well. Trixie is a very large brown bear who wears a blue bow on her head, a blue tutu around her waist, and holds a blue handkerchief in her left hand. She also has a slight crush on Henry, and she's voiced by Cheryl Poole. Big Al is the fattest bear. He's gray with the light gray belly, wears a tan hat and a red vest. He plays an always out-of-tune guitar and is voiced by Tex Ritter. The Sunbonnet Trio consists of Bunny, Bubbles, and Beulah. Bunny stands in the center of the stage. She's voiced by Jackie Ward. Because she and her sisters are triplets, they all have brown fur and wear matching bonnets and dresses. Bubbles stands on the audience's left between Gomer and Bunny and is voiced by Lulie Jean Norman. Beulah stands to the audience's right and is voiced by Peggy Clark. Gomer never sings, but instead plays his piano, which is a honeycomb on the top of it. He's considered Henry's right-hand bear. He was originally brown, but during the refurbishment, they changed him so he now has a deep burgundy red with a blonde goatee. And then, of course, you have the 5 bear rugs. Zeke is considered the leader of the 5 bear rugs. Zeke plays the banjo and taps on the dishpan with a real old country beat. He's a gray bear with glasses who wears a tan top hat. He was voiced by Dallas McKennon from 1971 until July 1975 when Randy Sparks recorded his vocals. Zeb Zeb is a brown bear with light brown stomach. He plays the fiddle as well as wears a bandana around his neck and a miner's hat. He's voiced by a member of the Stoneman family. Ted is a tall, skinny bear who blows on the corn jug and plays the washboard. He has brown fur and wears a vest with a brown hat. Fred is the biggest of the 5 bears. Ironically, he plays the smallest instrument, the mouth harp. He's a brown bear and wears blue jeans held up with suspenders as well as a striped red-white tie. Tennessee is the bear who plays the thang, which only has one string. He's a brown bear and wears a red bandana around his neck. He was voiced by a member of the Stoneman family as well. And then you have Baby Oscar, who appears with the 5 bear rugs, but plays no instrument. In fact, he never says a word. He's a brown bear and always has his teddy bear to keep him company. In the 1971 album, it is mentioned that Zeb is his father. Rufus is not a performer, but instead runs the projections and the lights. He's never seen, but can be heard from time to time running backstage, constantly out of breath. Now, hanging on the wall, you have 3 animal heads. You have Buff. He's considered the leader of the animal heads and is also the largest. He has the head portion of an American bison and whistles throughout the show. He's voiced by Disneyland legend Thurl Ravenscroft. Now, of course, Thurl, you would know as the voice of Tony the Tiger, and also as the voice of the grim grinning ghosts in the song. Max is the head portion of a buck and is voiced by Pete Renaday. And Melvin is a bull moose head. He often makes good-natured jokes and is voiced by Bill Lee. Now, there is one other character in the show, and that's Sammy. Sammy is Henry's raccoon pal, who cuddles around Henry's top hat. He acts like a coonskin cap for Henry, and he's voiced by Bill Cole. Now, the show itself was basically a continuous string of short country songs sung by various bears. As each bear sings their song, a curtain opens to reveal them, except in the case of Wendell, Gomer, and the Sunbonnet Trio, all of whom rise from the center of the stage, and Teddy Barra, who descends from the ceiling. What I'm showing here are clips from the Country Bear Jamboree. If you'd like to see the whole show, just click the card up on the top and it'll take you to the show. Now, as far as why the show worked, it was because George Bruns and Ex Atencio did a really good job of bringing together a country music score that was some familiar country music, if you know the genre, and some new tunes that they had written that were in the same sort of realm. And they used some country music singers to bring it together. So when you think about the performers, the whole thing kind of works because it just played out well. And it was really, really smart that way. And you had Henry providing sort of the guidance throughout the show. And there was a humor that was built in by Mark Davis with the way the show elements worked. So it just kind of flowed to a large degree, and it was kind of funny and cute. From the bears themselves to the way that they interacted with each other, it just worked. Liverlips is a funny, funny character who comes out on the stage and he looks amusing the way he's out there. Henry keeps telling these kind of one-off jokes like, "Hey, I'll come up and see you, Teddy Barra, as soon as I can find a ladder that's tall enough." And those kinds of things. And there was interplay between the bears and little backstage action that you'd hear about. So it wasn't just about the bears on the stage. It was about the whole performance. It was an art in a way. And everybody had a song. And it kind of worked. So you had the three sisters on the stage and they were singing "Every Guy That Turns Me On Turns Me Down." And you had Wendell singing in the good old key of G. And then talking about "Mama Don't Whip Little Buford." It just worked. And then Big Al, so comedic in his appearance. And he was singing about blood on the saddle, which is so everything that Disney isn't. It just worked because it was so unusual. And then putting in the Ballad of Davy Crockett was a nice mix in there too. It just worked to a large degree. And then at the end, you had a song that was, "We thank you folks for kindly dropping in. We hope you'll come and see us now and then. We've done our very best to please with all the bare necessities. We hope that you'll be coming back again. Come again. Come again." And it works. It just plays out so well. Then you had Melvin, Buff, and Max kind of over your head as you were walking out of the theater. And the cool part was when you exited the show, you entered into what was the Tall Tale Inn and Cafe, which was kind of a cute name, Tall Tales. And as you walked by, you saw that there were 3 mounted heads on the outside here too. There were also Melvin, Buff, and Max. And they were singing the goodbye song too. And occasionally, when the show was going on, if you were in the Tall Tale Inn, you could see them actually interacting in some way. They had other banter that they did. It was really pretty cool and kind of brought you together with the show so you could kind of see part of the show without using your coupon ticket. I think it was a D ticket to go see this. You didn't have to use the D ticket to go in and see them. You could actually kind of watch them from here. It was really cool and very smart. And unfortunately, at some point along the way, Disney took those down and decided to make the Pecos Bill Cafe bigger, so you don't have them anymore, and the Tall Tale Inn doesn't really exist the same way it used to. I guess they still call it the Pecos Bill Tall Tale Inn and Cafe, but most people don't think of it that way. It's just sort of lost to history why it's the Tall Tale Inn. But the thing is, that wasn't the only show that was ever produced. In 1984, Disney decided to create a Holiday Hoedown where it would be a sort of a Christmas spectacular and they would have some fun with the show. And they actually repeated this show. They copied it, cloned it, and put it over in Tokyo DisneyLand and Disneyland as well. So the show existed in all 3 parks during the holiday season. And it was a lot of fun to see the show. So Disney pretty much ran this show every year. At Disneyland, it was every year until they closed the Country Bear Jamboree to make way for the new Winnie the Pooh ride. And at Disney World, it was until about 2000 that they ran this show. There's a couple of stories about why they may have stopped it, but I think the most compelling one is the fact that there were some copyright issues with some of the songs. Disney was using some of the songs that they assumed were in commercial release and widely available for public use. But a couple of them were not available for commercial use like that, and Disney wound up having to remove the songs from it. And rather than go ahead and retheme it or change the audio animatronics, they just decided to stop making the show. So they don't do the show anymore. It's not displayed anymore, and I really miss it. It was a lot of fun. It was just an entertaining little show that was just something kind of fun. You picture some of the different characters wearing like Santa hats or having lights on them or something along those lines, and you kind of get the picture of it. The holiday show followed the same pattern as the original show. Now, of course, if you want to see this entire show, I'll put a card up in the top corner of the screen so you can go watch the entire show yourself. The bears appeared in the same order and had sort of the same general shtick that they did, though of course it was more holiday themed in the way that they talk to each other. They're wearing different outfits, some have Santa hats on, they have lights on them, there's lights around the stage and all these other things, and they sing Christmas and holiday themed songs throughout the show. But generally speaking, it feels kind of the same as the original show in terms of the way that the show plays out. You have the 5 bear rugs who come out and do a country version of a jamboree on a Christmas music. And you have Liverlips. Now he's dressed as Elvis, singing an Elvis-inspired song. It's really nice and well thought out. And when you see the different characters up there, they kind of capture that spirit of being in the holidays. Everybody has a Christmas song they sing or a New Year's song that they sing. And it kind of flows out that way. It just works because it's a lot of fun and they do it in an entertaining sort of way. When Teddy Barra comes out, she has a cast on her leg, and she says, "Why don't you come up and see me?" And in this case, Henry says, "Well, as soon as I find a pen, I'll come up and sign your cast." It's great. It comes together. So everybody's dressed warmly, and they're singing songs, some of which are familiar, some of which were written by some of the Disney Imagineers. Big Al, in this case, comes out and sings a song that's about New Year's, which is kind of funny in a strange sort of a way. And then at the end, they get together and everyone does a hoedown with a spectacular sort of Christmas thing. And then at the very end, Henry says, "Happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas," and sends everyone on their way. Beginning in 1986, the Vacation Hoedown debuted at the Magic Kingdom. Now, the intent was to redo the entire show to make it fresh. The show had been around since 1971, and here it was 15 years later, and the show was still the same show, the same bears making the same corny jokes, and they decided to make a change to it to try and bring in attendance and get people more interested in the Country Bears, to freshen it up a little, if you will. So they basically rethemed the show. And it's the first time that Disney had ever taken on such an endeavor where they actually just took exactly the same things that were happening on the stage, wrote new songs, kind of re-lip-synced it a little bit, and created an entirely new soundtrack to go along with the actions that were happening on the stage. And it's a very clever thing that they did, and I give them a lot of credit for kind of retheming it over that period of time. Now, this show ran until 1992, so it had a 6-year run in the parks. And the reason that they switched it back, primarily, we understand, was attendance. It struggled during its run in Florida. So on the 20th anniversary in 1992, they decided to put it back to the original show. And since then, it's had a lot better attendance than the Vacation Hoedown did. Now, the Vacation Hoedown was clever and cute, and it kind of took the bears on vacation, took them to summer camp, and it was very unique and different, but I don't think it ever really captured the imagination the way the original did. I think the original really had Mark Davis's stamp on it and really gave you a feel for these funny bears up on stage. Now, in the Vacation Hoedown, they were a little bit more silly. It's not to say they weren't funny, they just kind of took a different bent on it a little bit, and it wasn't quite the same when they did it. So it didn't have that same effect, and I think it kind of lost its luster just a little bit. So bringing it back to its original glory was probably a really good thing. Now, as we watch what was going on for the Country Bear Vacation Hoedown, you see that the show really doesn't work. If you want to see this entire show, just click the card up in the top right-hand corner. It just plays out kind of awkwardly. It's kind of like watching the Star Wars holiday special in the 1970s. It just doesn't fit within the thematics that they had put together. The story was so well thought out by Mark Davis, and the music from Exitensio and George Bruns just worked. Here, it just doesn't feel right. It feels like they're doing something and throwing it at you in sort of that 80s style that really doesn't make sense. Everyone's wearing new clothes. Everyone's got something different that they're doing. The jokes are still there. Everything kind of plays out, but it doesn't work the same way. It just doesn't feel like the Country Bears. And I understand why they replaced it, and I'm actually glad that they did, because this show was just kind of silly and trite and didn't really fit with anything. Even Big Al doesn't work in this case. And Sammy is no longer a raccoon. Now he's a skunk, which is, I don't know, I guess it works, but it's just kind of silly. Now, one little minor detail that I think is kind of amusing. For some period of time after the Vacation Hoedown replaced the Country Bear Jamboree, they continued to show pictures of the original Country Bear Jamboree in the vacation guides and the park maps that they would put out. And then after they took away the Vacation Hoedown, they still continued to show the Vacation Hoedown in the Country Bear guides and map books and other things they would put out. So for a period of time, they were kind of out of sync. You would look at it and see somebody in their vacation outfit when, in fact, the Country Bear show was still going on. And this happened for a number of years. It happened throughout pretty much the life cycle of the Vacation Hoedown for 6 years, and then happened for another 8 or 9 years after the Vacation Hoedown was taken out and the original show was restored. The park guide maps and the various vacation things that they put out were out of sync and they were showing the wrong pictures. It's just kind of an amusing little side note. It doesn't really matter to a lot of things, but bad show in a way, right? Where you would go in and you would see a picture of Big Al in one costume and you would go to the show and he'd be wearing the other costume. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this look back to the original Country Bear Jamboree. I found it to be a lot of fun and really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too.